What's up, guys? So I wanted to go ahead and revisit the Galaxy Note 9 here. So I did a YouTube short on this phone, and to my surprise, this phone still gets a lot of attention still. What I noticed, there's a lot of people who really like this phone, and a lot of people who think this is the peak of Samsung. So this phone came out in 2018, and I definitely think it's one of Samsung's best phones. I personally think the Note 10 Plus was actually, I still think, one of the best Samsung phones that they have ever put out. Just as far as the design goes, if you look at the Note 10 Plus, even compared to the S23 Ultra, and even when they come out with the S24, that phone still looks very good in comparison. So I know that they took away the headphone jack with the Note 10 Plus, and I think that's why people really like this phone in particular, because this is probably the last this phone and what was it, the S10 Plus that had the headphone jack and the micro SD card support, and then Samsung started to take it away, as we saw that trend basically started by Apple to get people to basically move to wireless earbuds. You could debate whether that's a good or a bad thing. I still think it's kind of a money grab, but again, you could debate that wireless earbuds would be the future eventually, right? And then also the SD card support stuff. You can also, I get a lot of arguments about this of SD cards being slow, but I do think SD cards are still relevant. I think so. I totally 100% think that's a premature move right there, taking away the SD card support. Basically, I think it's just a money grab again, like the headphones, and I think it was done prematurely. I think both of them, right? So basically the SD card thing is just a way to sell you up on gigabytes, right? So Samsung will release a 128 gigabyte and then sell you up on a 256 or the 512, depending on what type of person you are. If you take a lot of video, then you're going to be spend that extra money to buy the higher configuration model. All right, so let's actually talk about the Note 9 and the display. I think the display is still very beautiful on this phone. Now, of course, you have these bigger bezels, which makes it look a little bit dated, of course. But what I like about this phone, and also in this time period, a lot of smartphone, companies were basically having these notches, and Samsung actually never had a notch on their phone. They actually just waited until they had the punch hole displays, which I thought was really good. But you get this really nice, beautiful screen. Samsung has always been ahead in terms of screen quality. Here, this is the Super AMOLED display. It's 1440p. It's actually not as big as you would think these days. Most phones are 6.7, 6.8 inches. This is a 6.4 inch display, so it's not a super big phone, but it does have that boxy, design here. But it's 1440p, 516 for the PPI. Super colorful panel on here, and it is a curved panel, and I think the display looks absolutely beautiful still. It does pretty decent outdoors. Of course, it's not going to be as good as the newer phones, but I think the display is just top. Like, you could just watch content on this phone, it still looks beautiful, and there's no notch or punch hole as well too, which a lot of people like. So I think the display on here has just aged extremely well. It's just a beautiful panel here, just really nice. Alright, so what's, to my surprise, pretty interesting about the Note 9 is it's still fairly decent at gaming here. Like I said, I wouldn't necessarily buy the Note 9 because you can get a Note 10 Plus for really cheap. You can get, Note 20 Ultra for a really good price. But I do really like this phone. It's just like a collector's phone. But it actually still works extremely well. And I know that this phone is like super cheap and very affordable and overseas as well too. So I know this is very cheap. So I know a lot of people are probably still holding on to it or considering getting one as a secondary device. But yeah, it actually still is able to play PUBG pretty smoothly. Now, of course, we can't play at HDR Extreme, but we are able to play at some pretty good settings. It's decent. I think it's pretty much on par with like most mid-rangers these days. Yeah, it just does a pretty decent job when it comes to playing PUBG and stuff like that. It's not super laggy, and like I said, at HDR Extreme, it just runs like butter. It's super smooth, as you guys can see here. So we have the Snapdragon 845 chip on this phone, and then we also have the Adreno 630 GPU, micro SD card support, 128 gigs of internal storage, 6 gigs of RAM, and then we have UFS 2.1 on here. So basically, like I said, it's a fairly decent when it comes to gaming. Like I said, if you want a better gaming experience, definitely go like a Note 10 Plus, Note 20 Ultra, and just pay that extra money. But this is pretty decent for just casual gaming. Like I said, it basically is pretty much on par with, like, you know, some of the Samsung's newer mid-range phones or their budget phones. And in my experience, the experience is actually better because of the high quality panel on here as well too. So that's something that I really like. But overall, like, gaming performance on here, you know, it's pretty decent. It's going to give you still somewhat decent results here. Now, in the overall hardware department, you could definitely tell this is an older phone, and I think what gives it away is probably the camera, you know, design back here, and the physical fingerprint scanner back here, which works extremely well. But it's probably the camera design makes it look a little bit dated now. But it has that boxy feel, again, kind of sharp on the edges here. You also have your S Pen and your headphone jack down below. The S Pen still feels really good. It still feels extremely smooth as well too. So that's something that I really like. I think it still just really works really well. You can't really tell too much of a difference from this and the S23 Ultra. The S23 Ultra has a high refresh rate display, and the pen accuracy is a little bit better, but it's really not like crazy better. And you still have a lot of the same features as far as being able to come in here and like take a photo with the S Pen. So you still have a lot of the same features still with the S Pen. Essentially, Smart Select still here, live messages, all that good stuff. So the S Pen still works on this phone, and it's still very accurate as well too. The phone is also IP68 dust and water resistant, and the fingerprint scanner placement on here, I was never a huge fan of it being this far up on the device, but it does work really well. And also, you do have on here stereo speakers, and let's go ahead and just max the volume out. Yeah, the speakers sound pretty good. Even if you cover the bottom one, the top speaker still gives out a good amount of bass. It's still pretty clear. Now, what a lot of people forget about the Note is that you actually have an iris scanner on here, and Samsung never actually brought this feature back. They actually didn't bring two features back from this one from the Note 9, the iris scanner, and then the heart rate monitor from the S9 Plus as well too. They never brought that back, which actually was pretty useful. I still use it on the S9 Plus. But as you can see here, you can see you have your iris scanner right here. And hold on, let me come in here. And what's kind of funny is that you get like these little preview masks. So it basically scans your eyes, right? And it'll show you these little masks when it pops up. But I thought this was pretty cool. I liked it. I wonder why they didn't bring it back. But that was on here, which is kind of like a unique thing. A lot of people would say it's a gimmicky feature or something like that. And, you know, I thought it was okay feature at the time. This phone does have Samsung desktop support on it still. And actually, this phone last update was, I think it was Android 9. It was Android 10. Yeah, Android 10 One UI 2.5 here. And this phone still runs buttery smooth. You actually still have a lot of stuff on here that you would find on the newer Samsung phones, like DeX support, secure folders, you know, it has NFC, the S Pen stuff. So I can see why people held on to the Note 9 for such a long time, because it really, you actually kind of downgrade a little bit in terms of people who want a headphone jack and SD card support. You know, so that's one thing. But yeah, this phone still runs really fast. It's just the fact that it's not getting security updates and stuff like that. You really have to run antivirus software on this phone from the Play Store, and then you would have to really make sure that you're not clicking on any or links or anything that you're not supposed to be on, or downloading, trying to get free apps and stuff like that. You really have to be careful since this phone is not getting any type of security updates and stuff like that. Talk about the cameras a bit here. So you have a 12 megapixel standard and a 12 megapixel telephoto. It's got 2x optical zoom, and this is at the time where the ultra wide wasn't really like the main secondary camera like it is now. And it's got 4K 60, it's got 8 megapixel selfie cam, and then you have the iris scanner, and that shoots in 1440p for the front camera. The photos on the Note 9 are definitely pretty decent. I would say they're probably, these days, probably in line with probably like a Galaxy A14, I would say, something like that. Maybe a little bit better in like very bright environments, but I would probably put it in that kind of category. Doesn't do as well in low light. Sometimes images can be a little bit soft if you take it out of any type of good lighting scenario, but you would actually be surprised just looking at the photos here. You get some really good shots still with the Note 9. If you put a lot of light, or if you're just in a sunny environment, you still get a pretty decent shot. But yeah, it does struggle with white balance sometimes. I'm noticing sometimes the colors can be a little bit oversaturated, I guess. And yeah, it's just like the high dynamic range can be a little bit better on here. But like I said, it's a much older phone. But as you guys can see from the shots, it's really not too bad. It's still somewhat decent camera. Like I said, put it in some good light, you get a really good shot in, some pretty good stills actually. So this phone, battery wise, it's okay. It definitely, mine doesn't last really a full day. It kind of can if I'm not doing anything too heavy on it, just using it. Yeah, it's okay. It has a 4,000 milliamp hour battery. It charges pretty slow as well too. It charges at like 15 watts. And then you also have on here wireless charging, which is nice. But the battery experience, I think I'll probably get like maybe almost 5 hours. It's a little bit under 5 hours for sure. But yeah, screen on time is what you would expect from such an older phone, right? But I really like this phone. I think it definitely is one of Samsung's best phones. A lot of you guys seem to think that. I think, me personally, I think the Note 10 Plus is probably Samsung's best phone that they've released. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.